Welcome back. We're here back on the podcast with return guest, Mr. Bryan Mattimore from growth-engine.com. And Bryan is a co-founder and he is the chief idea guy of the Growth Engine Company. They are a 24-year-old innovation agency based in Chicopee, Massachusetts. And Bryan has ideated and managed over 200 successful innovation projects leading to $3 billion in new sales annually for 1/3 of Fortune 100 companies. He has all kinds of amazing, like 21 days to a big idea, idea stormers, how to lead and inspire creative breakthroughs. He has a fantastic TEDx talk where he gives you all sorts of ways to kind of break out of your own method of thinking. Like, for example, you put the word smart in front of something and what does it generate? You say smart pen, smart desk. He talks about redefining a problem, like how to sell life insurance to Catholics. What does selling mean? And we had a lot of fun last time, but now we're in this age of AI, which gives us this crazy, weird mix of like math and words and automation and creativity. And Bryan will help us sort through all that and he'll get us caught up. So Bryan, glad to see you again.
Yeah, Robert, thank you. And geez, I appreciate that introduction. It was wonderful. I was impressed. You know.
Well, I was impressed by your ideas, and I'm always kind of trying to be on the cutting edge, right? Like I started using ChatGPT the first week or so it came out, and it's just been so useful. And I feel like even if I spend hours a day on it, I'm always behind, right? I'm always like taking like YouTube transcripts, pasting it in, putting it into prompts, making it into blog posts, just trying to sort out the signal from the noise, but also like trying to I feel like my neurons in my brain are more ignited than ever before, but I also feel like mentally exhausted sometimes with all the possibilities. So I mean, what are your thoughts on just the way AI has blown up, the way people have used it? Like what's it meant to you?
Well, the big thing for me, and particularly in my work, is to think of it not as an answer machine, but really as an ideation or brainstorming partner. That to me is the highest and best use of AI. So if you're looking for it to quote give you answers, that's kind of the wrong mindset. What you're looking for is it to trigger your own ideas as a quote ideation partner. Now, obviously, it can do a lot more than that, but that's what we've been doing. And for instance, in our ideation sessions now, and we talked about this on our last conversation, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of different ideation techniques that we use in our processes, questioning techniques, metaphorical techniques, visual techniques, fantasy techniques. Those can be and it's all about stimuli, right? It's about triggering the brain in different ways. And now AI can kind of supercharge those techniques with extra stimuli. So when you go into a session, hopefully you've generated some extra stimuli with the help of AI. And now all of a sudden you're going from level 5 to level 10, whereas you might have started at level 1 without the AI help.
I like it. So use it to find new questions, use it to ignite your own thinking. Don't use it to get in the way of your own thinking. And I find myself sometimes having this conversation, right? When I talk to AI, it seems like the average person doesn't even know what Chat GPT is, right? Or if they do, they use it as a search engine. And it's like they say, like, well, instead of thinking you're using it, and it's like, well, no, I'm using it to fill in the gaps. Or like something I came across maybe 6 months ago was someone said, well, if you are like a content creator, thought leader, right? They say find other people in your space who are like on other podcasts or making YouTube videos like you are, and look at the questions and answers they come up with, and then figure out like better ways to answer those questions or figure out better questions. And I was like, hey, it's like a sorting tool, right? It's a way to break apart all this mess and for me to say like, hey, here's some new stuff I can create. And so you talk about this and you teach classes about this, and I'm really curious about like what have you seen people create with AI? What have been the breakthroughs as far as you telling them, hey, use it to like generate new visual ideas, use it to come up with new things? Like what have you seen created with AI lately?
Yeah, so we only have 20 minutes, but I'll condense this a little bit. Um, One of the really powerful things we used it for was we were doing a strategic planning process for, I can mention it was for TCU, which is a great university in Fort Worth, Texas. And we came up with a bunch of ideas and we used AI to help us dimensionalize those ideas, right? And so the triggers were things like, we want to help Fort Worth solve their water problem because it's growing so quickly. How could AI help us do that? Well, what resources are needed? What equipment do we need? What's the budget? What's the timetable? Please rate these ideas. And so if you come out of an ideation session and you have a bunch of ideas, you can go into AI and have those different triggers to help you develop those ideas. So we did that, and then we had their scientists look at the output, and frankly, 90% of the output was really, really good. You need an electron microscope to do X, Y, Z, very technical stuff, and AI did that. And so one of the best uses is coming out of an ideation is to help you develop ideas further with these kind of questions. That's certainly one way to use it. Another way, I've been playing with so many different things. I had it create a New Yorker cartoon for me one time, which was actually pretty darn good, because I didn't draw, but it drew for me.
Yeah.
Another one, actually, it was 2 weekends ago. I was talking with a friend and I said, um, what I'm thinking here is that we need the wisdom of silence. And I just happen to say that, because people talk so much, I guess, including me here. But as the more I thought about that, I said, that could be a really interesting book. And so I used AI to help me create a new book, which will come out in a couple weeks, believe it or not, because it can be, worked through self-publishing here. And the subhead of the book, I wrote it. It's the subhead is, the surprising benefits of saying less and achieving more. So, my God, right?
Yeah.
And there's heavy editing involved because there are what they're called hallucinations with AI, and some of the
Yeah.
research stuff was suspect. So there's a lot of back end work when you generate this stuff, and you want to prompt in different ways, and you say, well, I want not only a Bezos, quote, but something from somebody else. So anyway, there's a lot of work to it, but the point is, I wrote what I think is actually a pretty good book. I wrote a pretty good book in the space of a week, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's amazing. And like you're making me think that I used to have all sorts of little like sparks of ideas like that all the time. And I guess I still do, but like when I was younger, I feel like maybe it was like 90% of ideas would go unused, right? I would walk around with a little like notepad and I would stop and have an idea such as what you had. I said, "Hey, here's a phrase and that would be a cool book." And I'm not sure what to do with that. And it would just end up getting written down, and there would be other tasks, other priorities, better things to do. And so what's great about the speed that AI gives us is that many of those ideas can sometimes be used. And as you know, the idea is only part of it, but you use the AI to kind of get you like 60-70% of the way there, and then you inch it along. And then a lot of what our output is depends on what other people think about it, right? We might think that our own idea or book concept or content is so great, but then we need to get it to that published stage and then see what the feedback is. And many times we get like surprised. So as far as implementing some of the stuff you mentioned about these ideation sessions, and that sounds really cool and fascinating. And so like, what's that about? It sounds like a lot of controlled chaos.
Well, yeah, I mean, sessions are controlled chaos, right? We direct them. You don't know what's going to happen. Generally, when we do an all-day ideation, we might generate, 150 ideas. Of those, probably 10 or 15% are really good. So you get 15 or 20 really good ideas. Well, then what do, right? Then you can use the AI to develop the ideas. We use a technique called billboarding, and you can use this with AI. You can have AI create a billboard of the idea. And it's, like the headline, visual, and reason to believe. It's kind of an elevator speech, if you want to call it that, for an idea. And that's powerful because it crystallizes the idea. And then if you're in an organization, then it's easier to go and say, here's the idea. And the notion then of getting internal approval and funding is that much greater because you've got a visual, you've got, if you will, an ad for it. And hopefully, if you've done some of the other work, you've got background rationale for why you should go do this idea. Robert, I wanted to share a technique that your listeners can do that I think will blow their minds. It did when I tried it. There's a technique, there's a methodology called TRIZ. Have you ever heard of TRIZ? There's no reason why you should
No.
have. TRIZ, it's a Russian acronym, and it's theory of inventive problem solving, right? And we had used this, and it's got the quick story is that this guy Altshuler from Russia went and he had a team of research go through 250,000 patents. They identified 40 principles of invention, right? My gosh. And we used to use those principles in our ideation session to trigger ideas, especially with engineers, trying to invent a new fuse box or something. So anyway, I was curious if AI knew about TRIZ, number one, and two, could apply it to things. And so I put it in there and it blew my mind. I said, go invent new Oreo cookies, something really pedestrian, right? Although we've done work with Oreo, which is really fun. But anyway, we put that in there and 40 ideas came out, each one based on those different principles. So your listeners, if they have a creative challenge, a promotional challenge, a new product challenge, doesn't matter what it is, just type in TRIZ, T-R-I-Z, and say, TRIZ, please use your 40 principles of inventions to help me come up with fill in the blank. And this is the kind of stuff we share in our training work. First of all, because people don't know it, but second of all, because it's so powerful. And to your point, it does kind of blow your mind, right? I mean, it's this amazing thing that, as I say, can supercharge your own thinking.
And it seems like that's kind of we mentioned like three different kind of ways to like funnel the ideas, right? We mentioned about the like the billboard idea, right?
Yep.
You said the headline, visual, and then reason to believe. You mentioned TRIZ, and then even while you were talking, like what came into mind in my imagination was the Scamper acronym, right? Like you substitute,
Yes.
you combine, you adapt, and so
Yep.
and like ChatGPT gives us all of this, right? We can just have any kind of content idea, make some bullet points, and then say like kind of funnel this and shape this in this way to get kind of some new unexpected like outputs come out. And then it's up to us, of course, to like filter like the best 10% and then recur and figure that out. And so like it's really fun to think about. But do you ever find yourself back in the overload method? Like sometimes when you're in that middle space, right? You say, hey, anything's possible. We're going to bust out the whiteboard, bust out the ChatGPT, people throw out ideas. And ideally you get to the end, you get like to simplicity, right? You get to a handful of outputs. But in that middle
Yep.
space, sometimes it's easy to like get lost or give up or get distracted or say, I've built myself a whole mess. So how do we avoid that? How do we avoid that kind of panic feeling of like, I'm only halfway through figuring out my idea and I'm in the bad part? How do I get to the end?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually have coined a term for that, the muddled middle. And you
Ooh.
you have to let yourself, I mean, it's chaotic. I mean, what's a good idea here? I don't even know. And so in our work, in our innovation agency work, we go into qualitative research then to help us. First of all, the billboard will crystallize the idea, but then we'll go to qualitative research. And, one of my expressions is it's amazing what you can learn by talking to people. And it really is. You go show people your idea and they're, even if they're friends, you can tell by body language if it's a good idea or if it's a bad idea. Cause they're, it looks okay. Or wow, yeah, where do I buy this thing? And so one of the tricks that we're using now, don't tell anyone, but this is an amazing trick because we used to do tremendous amount of focus groups and even quantitative research in addition to the qualitative, is actually to do research with AI. And the way you can do that is you can put different personas into Chat GPT or whatever. You come up with 10 different personas. This guy drives a Ford 150 truck, has a shotgun in the back. What would he think of this idea? Or this is a mom in Topeka, Kansas. What would she think of this idea? And again, these are not necessarily definitive answers, but they help you think and consider developmental components of taking an idea and bringing it, innovating that idea, and make sure you've got all the, if you will, the pieces correct. Because you got to get the price, the packaging, the positioning. If we're talking about new ideas now, you got to get all the promotions, where you distribute it. All those questions have to be answered. And if you blow even one of them, you're probably going to have a new product failure. So you have to get all those components working together. And once you do that, you kind of probably want to go validate it with real people. But again, you can save a lot of time and a lot of money by doing this research with AI. And by the way, you can even hold, if you're a senior executive here on a board, you can hold a board meeting with nobody being there. Put in all the different personas, right? And
Yeah.
ask questions of your board. And, it's a fun thing to try, because I think you'll find that, wow, AI anticipated a lot of what my co-board members were going to say. And so if you want, and by the way, if you want to really prepare for a meeting, you can do the same thing. You can put in the personas of the people in the meeting, see what they say before you go to that meeting, and you'll be ready to go, because you'll have already heard what they might be saying.
I love that. And that is definitely the day and age we're living in now, right? Where if you go to
Yes.
a restaurant, what do? You go on Yelp, you look at the reviews, you look at the menu, you look at the outside, you look at the inside. I guess there's mystery left, but you've kind of pre-educated yourself in order to like reduce the anxiety as low as possible. Whereas if you went to a restaurant in 1997, you would be such a fish out of water, but you like did a little bit of research to calm the nerves. And so a key word that seems to come up a lot in the last few minutes of our conversation is this word fun. And it seems like
Yeah.
it's important for us, as you're saying, to beat up our ideas, right? You have some new inventions, some new apps, some new SaaS, whatever. And you say, well, I know that there are all sorts of weak spots to this idea, but I don't know them yet because it's just me trapped in my own bubble. So I need to like shop it around and tell people about it. And where do I lose someone, right? Do I lose them in the first impression, take too long to get to the point, the ending? Is there one little deal breaker? So we have to like shop our idea around different people. And how do we get past that nervousness? We have fun. And it seems like a fun and easy way to have fun is to put it into ChatGPT. And I find myself, I think we've cracked the code here on like how ChatGPT is really addictive for me. I'm not sure about you, and I just use it
Uh-huh.
sometimes. Like, I think what did it for me was I watched a YouTube video that said, "Choose your favorite TV show and have ChatGPT just like make a new episode of it." And I was like, oh, this is a way for me to like learn and use this tool, but it's learning in disguise because I'm just like playing around. And so it seems like if we're nervous about some kind of meeting, which might be testing out our idea or just a social interaction, you figure out what's the situation, who are the characters, who are the people, and then just kind of play out the scenario, and then you'll kind of have thought it through, and you'll also enjoy yourself. And it seems like that's a lot of what life is all about, right? You have get the positive emotions at play, so that way it's just life is less scary, less dreadful. And in these last few minutes of our conversation here, Bryan, it's always fun to hear stories, especially from you, right? We talked about the ASPCA last time and like dressing up the pit bulls in funny costumes. And
Yep.
I know that you have the stories about like coming up with the Chips Ahoy flavors or the Ben and Jerry's. But as far as like a new-ish or unique story that we haven't heard before, what do you have to share with us as far as just all these concepts we're talking about?
Uh, I'm so future oriented. I'd have to think about what I could talk about and not talk about. But to give your readers or listeners one last creative trick, um,
Sure.
and the reason I'm thinking of it now is because I am now working on a young adult novel, right? And it's about inventor kids. But one of the tricks that your listeners can use, because you mentioned it when you said, create an episode of whatever you're interested in. I've studied story methodology. And by the way, those who have a narrative within their organization who want to tell a story and make something that they're trying to do more compelling can also use that. It's I've studied all the different methodologies, Aristotle and the hero's journey, all that kind of stuff. Save the cat. I don't know if you've ever heard of that methodology,
Oh yeah.
story methodology. That's probably the best one. And you can just go into AI and say, come up with a new story with the 15 beats that are part of the Save the Cat methodology. And you type in the characters. I have a friend who has done this now for his young kids. He made them the heroes of the story. And I know you have a 5-year-old. You can make your son or daughter or friends or sons or daughters or for a birthday party, you can make them the heroes of this story. And then when you get together, you might even read this story for them. And the fact that they're the stars of the show would be a great thing, you know. So I didn't really answer your question. I'd have to think about which ones would be non-confidential that I could share. But we've done so many over the years. But let me punt on that one for now.
Okay, but that's still valuable. This idea of like using these frameworks that we're talking about, right? And
Yes.
like use the TRIZ framework, and in this case, use the Save the Cat framework. And I'm always concerned about being too analytical about things and taking the fun out of it. But then at some point, when some of these ideas like the 3-act structure or like the Joseph Campbell 12-part hero's journey, when these became more mainstream, like
Yes.
movies especially became more enjoyable. Like there was kind of that period of time remember when they were cranking out like 3 Marvel movies a year, like 2008 to like 2018, and they were all hits. And like I was going to the movies like 3-4 times a year for like seeing these like 2.5-hour movies. And I noticed like the Marvels, especially like the big budget superhero stuff, it was more enjoyable. Maybe because it helped me get through it. And I was like, okay, like now we're at they're failing at the first third or so. Now we're kind of like at the halfway point where it seems like the most hopeless. Now we're at what seems like the final battle, but I know there's like another one after that because that's how that story
Yes.
goes. And I was finding myself just kind of feeling more enjoyment because I kind of had this idea of like where on the map I was. And I kind of knew what to expect, but I was also like surprised, and I felt like I could just like focus on like certain parts of the movie instead of being like lost. Like we've all been there where we had to like reread a book or rewatch a movie just to like understand it. And I felt like that knowing the structure helped me absorb everything in one sitting because I was like, okay, we're at this part of the structure, and now I can focus more on the characters instead of the plot, or focus on the Easter eggs and the finer points. And so it's fun to think about some of this stuff, right? About the perspectives. And something I told my mother about this morning was I'm working on like a custom book for my kid, right? Because you use ChatGPT and it remembers all sorts of stuff, and I can say, "Tell me what you know about me. Tell me what you know about my son." And then I was stuck about like what to put in there, and so now we have a fun answer, right? Have ChatGPT brainstorm what to put in this book for a 5-year-old based on Save the Cat, and then as you said earlier, of course, you don't take the output exactly. You clean it up, and maybe you put it through some of these like Artiste or Dolly, or like you kind of get the images generated and you use a print on demand. And now I'm excited about doing this. And as far as getting our readers, listeners, watchers excited about possibilities, what are some next steps with you? I know that you have the books, you have the company, you have the class. As we've been saying, we would love to have hours to fit all this in, but a podcast just gives us a taste to tease. So as far as someone running with what you have to teach them, to iterate ideas, use AI and everything that comes with it, how can somebody find out more about you?
Well, thank you for that. And the thing I would say is what makes us unique, and this is important, is the mashup of all the ideation techniques that we've developed over the last 25 years, these group brainstorming, and the mashup with AI. That's what is really our unique offering in the marketplace. And the last thing I would say before I give our contact information, a big part of succeeding with AI, like when you're ideating, is to be more and more specific. And so you put in a prompt, the results might be kind of banal and vanilla. Then you say, I don't like that. I do better here. Or this is kind of boring. Make it surprising. Do something I would never think of. Add another character, add a villain. The
Yeah.
key is to continually prompt with more and more specificity and tell ChatGPT what you're feeling and why it's not working for you. So that's a big part of what we do in our class, is how to prompt successfully beyond sort of the top line stuff, which is you get stuff that's not great often. To answer your question, Robert, and thank you for that. People can, my email is B Mattimore, B as in Brian, but Mattimore is Mattimore at growth-engine.com. So GROWTH hyphen ENGINE.com, and they can contact me if they have a question, or I'm happy to talk to them. I mean, a bunch of my books are really very good on these ideation things. I've written 2 AI assisted books, Quirks and Quotes, and there's a lot of stuff that people I think would enjoy if they want to reach out to me, and I'm happy to tell them what I think, even if they have a challenge. Have them reach out to me, and I'm happy to tell them what I think.
Very awesome. And I'm getting trends here from you and others when dealing with AI about just like having a good strategy, right? There's this fixation on
Yes.
the templates and the prompt libraries, and as you said, that it only gets you so far. It's better to say, well, here's kind of my multi-step process and how I'm going to attack it. And when the output comes back that I don't like, I'll say, hey, do better at this. I don't like this. I like this piece and not that piece. Here's how I feel. And so, and of course, all these AI models, they change so much, right? And so we need to figure out like these kind of evergreen strategies to use the AI, figure out ideas, to create AI assisted books, to create great marketing. And it seems like you're the guy to help us out with that. And so we said that website is growth-engine.com. And that email address is bmattimore, that's Mattimore, at growthengine.com. And that's Bryan Mattimore. Growth-engine.com, my mistake. Yeah, and then that's Bryan Mattimore on LinkedIn. And then we said that the books, he has 21 days to a big idea, creating breakthrough business concepts. And it's great for us to use AI and to apply. I feel like when I make the show notes for this here, Ryan, I'm going to have to like say like, hey, here's the frameworks, here's the prompts to use, just because there's so many like good applicable stuff in here. And then so as far as kind of ending our conversation on a high note, right? We give people a mess of ideas, but it's up to them to apply it. And so as far as like getting us excited about some next steps, it's time for the scary part of the show. It's the time where I try to stump you, I try to put you on the spot, and I ask for a fun quote or lesson that has served you in life, business, AI, creativity, etc. And what comes to mind for you as far as a fun quote or lesson along those lines?
Well, two things quickly. One is, I think the best quote I ever had was, you don't innovate by changing the culture, you change the culture by innovating. So if you're in a company that's not particularly innovative, start innovating at your level, and that will change the organization. The piece of advice I want to give is that you can ask any of these AI programs a meta prompt. And that meta prompt is simply, what are the questions I should be asking here? Or what questions didn't I ask? And that's meta prompt. That'll really blow your mind. And then you're off and running. So I think that's a valuable thing for people to take on.
What question am I not asking? And I find myself doing that with my podcast guests as well. And as AI becomes closer to being sentient, closer to being a person, then that'll be more useful for us. So if we get nothing else from today's conversation, which we got a lot, but sometimes it's like, hey, I took like a page of notes. What do I do? Well, the very next step, the homework assignment, is when you're using ChatGPT, ask it, what question am I not asking for you? And your mind will be blown, in addition to the Triz and the Save the Cat and everything else we talked about today. So that is Mr. Bryan Mattimore on LinkedIn, and that's growth-engine.com. B Mattimore at growth-engine.com. Talk to Bryan about your current difficulties, struggles. He loves working with these big brands to generate amazing solutions to hard problems. So start that conversation. And thanks, Mr. Bryan, for getting us excited, blowing our minds. Who knows what the next 3 to 5 years of AI will be. It's both scary and exciting at the same time. So thanks for being here and educating us.
Thank you, Mr. Robert. I loved it. As always, this was really fun being with you. I really appreciate it.